Hey all, so if it looks like I'm out in a little different area, I am currently out in Joshua Tree National Park. The wilderness class has our rock scrambling and navigation weekend out here, so I'm out here a day early because I had to come for the permits. So if you've been following my videos, you know that on December 11th, I finished the CDT, and that was the end of basically my 4th year doing these big trips. 2020, I did the PCT. 2021, I did Key West to Canada, the AT plus extra credit. 2022, did the CDT, got most of the way, COVID Noro, had to exit. And then, of course, this last year, did the Mississippi, finished up the CDT, and did a few other little things like, Grand Enchantment, etc. So I basically had 4 years of coming off trail and dealing with post-trail depression, post-trail malaise, whatever you want to call it. I usually call it the latter. I actually think I have a little bit of a different perspective on it just because, unlike a lot of people where they go do the PCT, it's their one big thing, they come back and they're going back to a normal life and struggle. I'm coming back, but I also know that I'm going back out again. Every time I've come off, even the first one, I always knew that, okay, I was going to be back in town, but only for, 4 to 6 months, and then the next one was coming. And yet, still, for all of these 4 years, I have really, really struggled. So if you're not aware, when I come back into town, we don't have a full-time apartment, house, anything like that. We got rid of pretty much everything. So when I come back, it is a very kind of unstable situation. This year was different because we finally have a rental, but usually come back reunited with Jen, and then it's running around to the campgrounds and living a life on the move. 3 of the years when I came off trail, I had been successful. I had made my big goal, finishing the PCT after dreaming of it for 10 years, somehow making it 5,000 miles on the ECT, etc. 1 year I had come off the CDT, and that was a failure in that I had wanted to go monument to monument, but I didn't make it all the way. So I kind of feel like I've been through the gambit on that. And then this last time I came off and I'd been successful, finished the Triple Crown, and then now what? So at least for me, there is kind of a progression and emotionally, etc. And honestly, it starts earlier on the trip. A lot of people are really excited when they first start out on one of these long trails. And then after they've been out there for a month or two, that's when they struggle the most. This is why you get so many people quitting in Northern California on the PCT or, Pennsylvania, etc. on the AT. I tend to be a cynic. So when I started the PCT, I was excited, but also part of me was going, holy crap, what have I just put myself in for? I've never done a hike longer than about, 2 weeks. I'm setting out for 2,600 miles. I think I was more freaked out at mile 1 than anything else. But I have never so far actually come close to wanting to quit during that kind of middle section. I think partially for me, I just like going out, and that whole existing out on trail is kind of the core of what I'm looking for on the trail. A lot of people, you ask them oh, what was your favorite part? And it was Mount Whitney, McAfee Knob, things like that. Those little singular points, they can be cool or not. I'm not a big fan of Whitney, but to me, the high point of the hike, the reason why I hike, the vibe I go out there for is not the start of the hike, not the end of the hike. It's when I'm out there. I've been out there a number of weeks. The end is far, far off, and I'm just kind of existing on the trail. When I think back, that's kind of the most enduring feeling. It's just that kind of vibe where, yeah, I'm out here. This is my day to day, and things just pass for long periods sometimes. On the Mississippi, the Big River section, I guess the locks in the Big River section where things were just kind of flowing and we just existed out there. Yeah, this day there might be mosquitoes, there might be heat, there might be rain, but still there was just kind of this tempo to the entire thing. I am also funny because while I'm looking forward to the end, I'm looking forward to making the goal. I'm very anticlimactic when I actually get towards the end. When I got to the PCT monument for the first one, it was a huge thing, but I just kind of popped around the corner and I'm like, I think I said the F word. And then I kind of sat there for a while, but I'm not one for over the top celebrations. The pictures I take, I make sure I want to get my summit picture, but I'm not bringing a whole bunch of alcohol. I'm not firing off champagne, anything like that. I get my picture, yada, yada. And at that point, I'm already mentally on to the next one. By the time I was in the last 200 miles on the PCT, for example, I already knew I was going to do the AT. I was already getting excited for the Florida Trail, stuff like that. End of the Triple Crown. I didn't go over the top with any sort of celebration, crowns, yada, yada, because quite frankly, I was busy planning the American Discovery Trail. I think that's just a personality quirk with me, though. I see a lot of people where the monument is like the big screaming celebration. And I think that applies because by the time I finish, by the time I come off trail, mentally, I'm already doing the next one. I'm headed that way. I still struggle, but at least I have a direction, though not for a while. So, okay, I finish, I come off trail. Generally, I am very happy to be done. I mean, by the end of one of these trips, I remember talking to my mother on the PCT, and I'm enjoying it out here. I'm very happy I'm doing it. However, I'm ready to be done. Similar with the CDT, I mean, it was cold. I was far later than I expected to be. I wanted to be done. I wasn't going to be quit. I wasn't going to quit or anything, but I was just ready to finish. I'd put in so much. I knew it felt like latter days. I was ready to get to the monument, be done, accomplish the thing. So, okay, I finish, now I come off trail. Generally, immediately after coming off trail, about the first 2 weeks or so, I'm really happy. There's this sense of accomplishment. There's a sense of, okay, I'm in good shape. I've lost all this weight, etc. I'm getting all the food that I've been dreaming about, stuff like that. I'm getting to see Jen again. I'm getting to go scuba dive, do all these things I've been missing. So there's kind of a honeymoon period. After I came off the CDT, when I did that interview with Constantine on his podcast, that was actually during that period. He even commented that he was kind of amazed how happy I sounded. And like I said, that was kind of before I fell off the cliff, which happens every year. So yeah, 2 weeks, visit family, yay, rah, rah, did this thing. Holy crap, I'm a thru hiker who has done the PCT, done the Triple Crown, etc. And then kind of out of nowhere, I'll kind of take a dive. I'm one that kind of struggles with mental health anyway. Thru hiking's good for me because it kind of fights the depression, anxiety sort of thing, gives me a goal, keeps me focused. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about the effect of coming off trail. So after I've been home for 2 weeks, generally I have, gotten all the food that I was looking forward to, veggies. There's a Mongolian place that we really like to go to, stuff like that, few spicy curry things I wouldn't eat on trail. And it's coming back, opening storage. I get to find all these things that I've basically forgotten about, like my laptop. I'm always really happy to get my laptop because I've been living off of my phone for 6 to 9 months. Getting clothing, that my comfy fleece that I don't bring on trail, stuff like that. So that's all super positive. And then generally all of a sudden I just kind of start feeling listless, and that's the start of the struggles. Usually it's about 2 weeks after. Often at that point I'm settled back into the routine. I've seen my friends, I'm starting to dive, things like that. And the biggest thing I miss is just this kind of sense of progress and a goal. And it's funny because I'm not one to sit still. Like right now, I am here recording this in Joshua Tree because I am in motion doing the wilderness class, and I've got that for 10 weeks and I'm going straight for Delaware. But still, there is just this kind of sense of listlessness, I guess would be the best way I can describe it. I usually talk about it to Jen as kind of post-trail malaise. And part of it is metabolism, being out constantly exercising. Even if I'm out every couple of days doing stuff here, it's still not the same as thru hiking. The way you feel when you're just full body tired every night, falling asleep, is so pleasant. And you lose that. And everybody gains weight when they come off trail. And just starting to feel like clothing fitting a little wrong versus the trend of always getting looser while you're on trail. That's part of it. And the other part is just all those friends that I was missing, coming back and talking to them, especially after the PCT when I came back. It was hard because it felt like everything was the same. Here I'd gone and done something I dreamed about for 10 years. I was a person who had done the PCT, and that was huge. And then I came back and it felt like everybody was exactly where I left them. And while I'd had this big epic adventure for 5-6 months, they were just going to work. Everything was still there. All the restaurants were exactly the same. And there was this sense of things should have changed more. I had stepped away for 6 months, done this big thing, come back, and everybody's just there doing exactly the same thing. And that has been a struggle every time. I feel like I handled it a little better this time just because I'm kind of used to it. The other advantage I have is Jen is just a wonderfully supportive person for me in general. And she understands that I've been very frank with her on how I'm feeling and what I need from her. And in most cases, that is just to plan stuff, get us out, and I'm fine doing it. It's just hard finding that same motivation. I used to be full-on weekend warrior. I was IT for 20 years, and every weekend I would be out doing something. We're talking 40 plus weeks a year, every weekend, out to the Sierra, out to the desert, doing this, doing that. And that felt like big epic adventures. Now I come back from doing the PCT and okay, we're going to go up and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's just hard to feel like that's epic anymore. I joke that through hiking has ruined me, but it actually has. If I went and did a 50-mile backpack prior to doing the PCT, I would have gone, oh wow, that was like a big thing. Now I can't help but look at it, particularly right after that kind of 2-week period, and feel like, I walked across the country. I can look at a globe, and I have, under my own power, walked from here to here, dragging my stuff the entire way. This just doesn't feel epic enough. And it drives me crazy because I enjoy being outdoors. I mean, if you watch my videos, hopefully you get that sense. I just enjoy existing outdoors. I like doing stuff. But I feel like prior to doing the PCT, when I went to do a peak up in the Sierra, backpacking for a couple of days, climbing something, I would come back feeling like that's a big adventure. Now I do that same thing and I enjoy aspects of it. But yeah, it ruined that kind of big adventure aspect. And it also became a lot harder to deal with the drives. Because initially, I would spend every weekend driving from Orange County. 5 or 6 hours was my normal commute on a Friday night and on a Sunday night to get up to the Sierra, to do something, to get out to the desert. And now I can do that, but my tolerance for it has just gone way, way down. And I remember starting the PCT and how much I just enjoyed the fact I wasn't constantly having help. The first time I did the JMT, I enjoyed that I wasn't having to do that constant back and forth. Because I did that for a number of years. I mean, for a 5-year period, I worked in Boise, Idaho, and I came back pretty much every weekend to Southern California so I could lead backpacks and then would fly back to Boise, Idaho to work the following week. So commutes have been my bread and butter for a long time. I was doing trips to the Sierra, etc., for the better part of 15 years. So partially it's just burnout on that, but also just when we're looking at plans. For example, Jen and I were talking about Thanksgiving, what we were going to do, and initial plans were Bon Air, travel was going to be an issue. So we were saying, well, we could do a traditional Turktacular. That's what I would call my Thanksgiving trips, where we would go out, climb some peaks out in the desert, do a big thing. They always felt like a really big trip. Now it's like, yeah, we can do that, but it feels less of a challenge. And I think a big part of this is just me and my quirks, because part of why I jumped into scuba diving so much, for example, is that felt like a new challenge. I was climbing peaks, I was doing mountaineering outings, and eventually I would set out to do some peak and I knew that I could do it. Initially, first couple of big peaks I didn't know that I could do it, and it just blew me away when I got on top of those big mountains. It's like, wow, I climbed, 8,000 feet to get up here. I did that 4th class thing. It felt like I was really pushing myself, and I kind of lost that at some point. And then I started through hiking, and not only did I feel like that was now pushing myself, so these smaller backpacks were not. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about plans, and I just have this kind of gut exhaustion at the thought of driving all the way out to Utah and doing something in some canyon, which will be cool, but it seems like so much effort for something that just seems non-epic. Now, me being me, the problem is that's now starting to extend to these like easier level through hikes. When I did the PCT, the entire experience just blew me away. When I went out on the AT itself felt kind of kindergarten-y. Just because it is a lot more straightforward to hike that one. I felt like I'd been through the wilds going through Florida, the Keys, the Alabama road walk. Getting on the AT, that was very straightforward. Now when I went on the CDT, that felt like it was a push again, because the CDT, for various reasons, it's a lot more wild. And I've talked about that now that I finished the Triple Crown, I'm going out and doing the American Discovery Trail, because that similarly feels like it's pushing me. The idea of starting in Delaware and walking over to San Francisco, that seems almost impossible. And I love the kind of process of turning something that feels impossible into something that you're accomplishing day after day after day. And now when I look at some of these trails, like for example, when I went out on the Arizona Trail last year, I was enjoying it. It was nice and mellow, but it felt very straightforward. And I actually enjoyed it a lot more when I got out on the Grand Enchantment Trail, because that one was a lot wilder. I was pushing it through these remote areas. I was stressing about the food and the water carries. Who knows if I was going to have water here? I was slogging through Eagle Creek and all these other things. And so I'm now kind of leaning heavier on those trails that are a little more complicated because of that. Hence why the American Discovery Trail, North Country Trail, and the Yukon are things that we're kind of going for now. So the people and like overall circumstances in town not changing, the feeling like things that were formerly epic or adventurous are not, were two of the big issues. The other one, which is fairly common from people I've talked to, is through hiking seems to ruin a fair amount of us, as far as I would have struggled if I had to go back into the sort of job I had before. Look at the number of people who do a through hike and end up moving into a van, going into some sort of outdoor job, etc., etc. It's just kind of hard to make yourself go back into that kind of day-to-day grind after doing a big adventure like that. And again, I was doing a lot. Any sane person would have called me very, very active. 40 plus weekends a year. I mean, I was teaching classes, I was climbing mountains, I was paddling, caving, rock climbing, anything I could do outdoors. And yet, the feeling of being on trail is something that I want to get back on. So for me, all those contribute to kind of the post-trail depression, post-trail malaise sort of feeling. And for me, it basically means, again, those 2 weeks, I'm feeling really happy. I'm usually energetic, really enjoying talking to people. And then my energy just goes away. I feel slow. I feel tired. It's really hard to motivate myself to do anything, even things like this class. When I get to class and I'm talking to people, that I'm really, really excited for. All of the lead up, the hassle, the administration I have to do behind the scenes to get things moving, I really struggle with that. Half the time on a Monday, I'm dreading the fact that I need to motivate myself out, go to class, and do this thing. And this is a volunteer class that I enjoy. I have done for years. But it's just hard. And the same thing, like motivating myself to get out and hike. Because, okay, you're feeling stagnant. How do you fix that? You get out and you exercise. I need to prepare for the next trip. But it's hard to kind of get that same sense of excitement. Oh, wake up at 4 a.m., drive out to a trailhead and hike. Just because it doesn't, I've been out on trail for 6 months at a time. I can do a 15, 20 mile hike. I might struggle, if I'm a little out of shape, this, that, or the other, but I know I can do it at some level. So it's hard to just kind of get that sense of excitement. Now, when I do go out, I actually hike. I'm generally fairly happy on the actual trip, even if it doesn't, I'm not feeling right. The other thing that I struggle with every time is when I come back to civilization, it's hard to get used to things that I was very used to before. Being in crowded areas is a real struggle. When I came off the PCT, I was struggling being in an enclosed car with my parents immediately after, driving on the freeway where you've got stuff moving all around you, it took me a long while. It takes me a couple of weeks at least to kind of get that kind of filter where I can just deal with it. Going through the airport where there's crowds, there's people talking, it's a real struggle. This year, I came straight off the CDT where I hadn't seen more than a handful of people from, end of October till I came off the trail a month and a half later. And going on that dive boat just about killed me because there was no room. I was feeling claustrophobic. I was sleeping in a coffin of a room. This year, knowing that and knowing that the campgrounds we live at are also crowded, they've got a lot of people, they've got a lot of noise, they've got a lot of traffic noise. We tried to actually adjust, and we made sure the place we're basing out of is quiet, doesn't have traffic noise. And that has been better to an extent, at least for that adjustment period, but it still hasn't helped the kind of general malaise. So like I said, this is my fourth year going through this, fourth end of a big season. And I know what's coming. I know kind of how to deal with it, but I struggle with it. Best things I've found, the having to get used to crowds and driving, that it's just time. You just got to deal with it. It doesn't seem like forcing myself to be around crowds gets me over it any easier. There's just an adjustment period coming back into civilization. The biggest thing that actually helps me as far as the general malaise has quite frankly been planning the next big adventure. If I wasn't going back out on trail in 5 weeks, I think I would be in much worse shape than I was before. The people who are go and do the PCT and then they're going back to work for a couple of years and maybe they're doing a trail in a few years, that has to be really, really hard, because honestly, the only thing that gets me through this is focusing on that next adventure. I'm planning that next thing. I have been going over maps, spreadsheets, getting everything set up for the ADT, the Yukon, etc. And that's probably when I am happiest. Outside of that, the biggest help has been trying to focus on the things I miss while I'm on trail, like scuba diving. Can't scuba dive while on the trail. Haven't managed it yet anyway. So focusing on getting back, and when I've been able to dive, we've had issues with California weather the last 2 years. But the year before that, where I came back and it was kind of, I was out constantly with friends, that helped keep me motivated, gave me something to focus on. The other thing is Jen. She is an amazing partner in general. She is more supportive than I deserve, and she is very good about when I explain, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I need you to do. She does it. So what I kind of realized after the PCT is I was having trouble motivating myself to go out and do stuff. I was happy to do it. It was just really hard to motivate myself to plan it. So if she wants to go do a weekend backpack somewhere, I can do it. I'm not going to be excited about it. I'm not going to throw a fit, and I'll probably be okay once I'm out there. But she has to be kind of the driving, motivating force, which she's capable of, but I tend to be the loud, energetic one, driving things forward quite a bit. It's different in this kind of post-trail period. So like last year when we did Black Canyon, she was the one that was kind of the motivating force between, oh no, we're doing this. If I had just been left up to my own devices, it would have been hard not to just kind of sit around. And it is funny because when I say just like sit around, I am not just sitting on the couch playing video games and watching TV. I have had very little leisure time since I've been back because I came off with a phone full of pictures and videos. I've got stuff to process. I need to get stuff archived, accessible, clean things up. Once I get access to my laptop, I have a backlog of all these kind of like tech things to do. Not to mention, I always have a bunch of video ideas. And I have been very productive and I have been getting a lot done. I'm also kind of overhauling all of our outdoor gear, getting things reorganized so we're good for the following year, and making plans. But I still just get into these ruts where I'm struggling for days at a time. And it's funny, like right now, I kind of use the energy of the wilderness class because for me, I'm funny. I am an introvert. I need to have privacy in order to kind of regenerate. If I have to sleep in a room with a bunch of other people, I'm not going to get a lot of rest, and I'm going to look forward to getting the heck out of there. See me at like Toaster House or some of those things. But at the same time, I like interacting with people. So right now we're in a remote rental that is great. I love being up there, but I perk up massively when you get me out someplace like this where I'm getting to talk with people, be around people. So I basically have kind of, during the week, I'm in kind of malaise mode. And then when I'm going out to do the class, often I'll be recording a video like this because all of a sudden I'm perking up and excited because people, yada, yada. The really funny thing is year 3, after coming off the CDT, the failed year, it wasn't very different. I mean, I was bummed that I hadn't completed the Triple Crown. I think I was more bothered that I was going to have to go back and it wasn't going to be clean, etc. Because I wanted to get on and I wanted to do all these other adventures. But I still went through the same mode. And I don't think I've yet come out the other side of it organically, because what brings me out of it is when all of a sudden all I have is this much time and then I'm leaving for the next adventure. On the PCT, when I came off the PCT the first year, I really struggled. I was only off trail for 3 months. You know, I had 2 weeks that were good. I had 2 months after that where I was kind of struggling. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I have to be back on trail. I don't have much time. And then all of a sudden my energy's back. I'm motivated and I'm moving. And once I'm actually on the move, then I'm kind of back to my normal happy self. And yeah, it really wasn't any different for me, the failed year versus the successful years. I still kind of had that 2 weeks that was good. I had the struggle period and then the motivation to get back out. It drives me crazy. I feel like my brain is just constantly sabotaging me. And if I'm not just uproariously happy, you know, living the dream, doing these massive adventures that I never thought I would be able to do, what am I going to do if I have to go back to work? I'm just going to, you know, go crazy and blow my brains out, because if I'm not happy here, how am I going to be happy like that? So that's basically how it's been for me the last 4 years. I'm kind of fascinated by this, and I do read other people's kind of like post-trail depression, etc. write-ups and videos. I disagree with a lot of them, but you know, I think it is a bit of a different mindset if you're coming off trail and you don't have the next big one planned. You know, if all you're going to be doing is, well, I sound like I'm bashing people that are working for a living and things like that. But I think the mindset is different if you're coming off and returning more to your old life versus you're viewing your time in civilization as kind of a temporary interlude. A friend I met on the Grand Enchantment Trail, I was just chatting with her, and she said that what she had been up to since she was back was getting fat and hating civilization, and that did really kind of vibe with me. That's a good description of the off-trail period. So yeah, the general advice I give people when you know, it's getting towards the end of one of these trails and people are kind of starting to get into that mode, like how are they going to deal with it, is focus on planning the next big adventure, because that seems to be the best cure for struggling being back in civilization. And if you have a partner and if you have a supportive partner, because trying to do this sort of thing when your partner does not support you, or you don't have a partner and you have to come back and kind of deal with it with yourself, has got to be a whole heck of a lot harder. And I've talked to people where their partner did not want them to go out and do one of these trails, but they felt like this was their dream and they would always regret it if they didn't, so they did. And yeah, that's rough. There you have it. Plan bigger adventures and take up scuba diving, and have somebody that just drags you out to do things and, you know, keeps you from getting too much in a rut. Interestingly enough, one of the things other people often talk about with like the post-trail depression adjustment that I don't think affects me as much is I'm a solo hiker. You know, Jen is with me in the middle of the summer, and I'm a little sad when she leaves, but by the end of the trail, it's not like I've been with people for 6 months and then I'm leaving and potentially not seeing them again. I do miss the trail community, but that tends to be more of, you know, I'll be hiking around somebody for a couple of weeks, then I might never see him again. The other interesting thing, so I've talked a lot about like the mental aspect. As far as the physical aspect, everybody seems to gain weight when they come off trail, unless you're just one of those normal, like rail thin, skinny people. And I think they still gain, they just are less. Just because even if you're eating right, even if you're still constantly hiking, there's a huge difference between, oh, I'm hiking regularly and, oh, I'm hiking carrying all my food. You know, through hiking you can eat pretty much anything and lose weight. When I came off of the PCT, I could hardly walk. I was limping around at my parents', you know, and I was fine in Washington. Like I was pushing hard, but I never felt like I was breaking down. I've seen a couple of people sending articles around about somebody who says, oh yeah, they went to a doctor after through hiking and they were all inflamed and like falling apart and they never recovered. I, some of those I think are just kind of written to try and get that kind of social media attention. Also, I think it may change after the first through hike. 'Cause like I said, after the PCT, I was in really rough shape and it took me probably like 2 weeks before I was able to walk normally and I wasn't dealing with soreness. When I came off the Eastern Continental Trail, I'd been out for 5,000 miles, 300 some days. My mother was surprised because she said I looked normal. And I'm like, why, thank you, mother. You didn't think I looked normal the other times. But she was correct in that I wasn't limping. You know, I was walking normally. I didn't seem to have that big kind of physical recovery that I did after the PCT. Same with the CDT. I've now come off all these trails. So the PCT, I guess I was pushing pretty hard right up to the end because I was end of September and you don't have that much of a window. Eastern Continental Trail, I was exhausted. I was just doing 15 miles a day, road walking, etc. I was ready to be done, but I wasn't pushing that hard. The CDT, I was pushing harder, but still, I guess when I came off the CDT this year, I did feel kind of hungover by the time I got out. I woke up that next morning and yeah, I felt like I had been drinking, but I hadn't been drinking. But once that was over and I had gotten a good night's sleep, there wasn't that sort of adjustment period. I did find it kind of disheartening. I kind of figured like, oh, I have to be in the best shape of my life. I should be able to go back, rock climb, do all these other things. At least for me, yes, I was in good shape in a lot of ways. However, I was in good shape for a very specific type of activity. You could put a pack on me with 5 days of food, et cetera, and I can walk on relatively good trail, light cross country, stuff like that. However, scrambling, I felt really, really off. I went to do a peak cross country at my parents' after one of them, and I was just really frustrated by how unsteady and off my feet and my knees felt. Other activities, like when I was climbing, I was lighter, so that was a little easier, but my upper body wastes away when I'm on trail. My legs bulk up and my upper body. So yeah, this time around, I try and make adjustments every year, see if I can do better. Honestly, though, like the scuba diving, that worked really well for me after the ECT, but I haven't always been able to do that because the beach is here, because of the rain, I can't always get out and dive. So this time around, I tried to be a lot more focused as far as I had reminder lists set up with all these goals of I'm going to try and do this, I'm going to try and do this. Some of them were practical, some of them were less so. It's like, okay, well, I want to try and like to play guitar and stuff like that. Go through storage, plan for next year, and tech-wise, fix my backups. I had some things I wanted to learn. And so that has given me a little bit of a progression. Honestly, I just hit the period now where I feel like I'm running out of time here. I've got 5 more weeks until I'm on the move, and I've got a lot I want to accomplish, so I'm finally starting to kind of perk up again. So hopefully you found this interesting. I like kind of capturing these because looking back on things like after the PCT, I find it an interesting kind of snapshot of where I was at the time. And who knows where I will be in another year, 2 years, etc. I never would have predicted that I would be here with, long hair and a triple crown and so much else planned. I am always interested to hear from others if they have kind of similar experiences or are things really different for them. So just a quick follow-up note, I'm now editing this video basically at the end of April while I'm on trail. While I had a kind of optimistic view at the time of, well, I feel like time's running out, I'm feeling better. I actually took a pretty hard crash after that. I still managed as far as keeping up with the wilderness class. But it's really hard to look at myself like talking on video in particular when I'm feeling the like strong post-trail depression, malaise sort of thing. And I basically lost 2 weeks where I could not get anything done. So I went from feeling like, hey, I'm going to accomplish all of this to just feeling horribly behind. And then I had to rush at the very last minute to try and get everything done. So if I guess there's any takeaway from this, it's just that I can't predict what the heck my mental health is going to do from week to week. Hopefully this was useful. Hopefully this video wasn't too long and rambly. It was a pain for me to edit, hence why I have to be in like a better headspace to be able to sit through all the me yammering.